Good morning, good morning, good morning. Actually, it's afternoon. It is Saturday afternoon, August the 1st, 2020. This is Marie Holiday, getting ready to upload another segment in reference to the whole core of what I talk about is holistic financial freedom. Check out my upload video from last Saturday. Check out my other videos if you hadn't had a chance to watch them. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button. We're all in this together. We can all learn from each other. So with this segment, I'm going to talk about, I talked some last week about some of my successful Facebook Marketplace selling tips. We all know that the more streams of income you have, the more financial freedom you can develop. So this is my successful selling tips, part 2 of Facebook Marketplace. And one of the things I want to talk about and share with the audience is this: what works for me is you as a seller need to determine on what your form of payment may be. And my form of payment that I only deal with is cash money. I don't do the PayPal, I don't do the Cash Apps, because I'm meeting my buyer in public at a local BP, and when I put in my description that cash payment is Zyfe amount only, that works for me. It just it's a lot of different payouts out there, but me personally, my form of payment is I do cash only. Another good selling tip that works for me is make sure you set your price as a seller and stick with it. Many people believe you got to lowball yourself. No, you know your product, you know the work that you put behind your product in gathering in building your inventory. So set your price and stick with it. I set my price, I stick with it. I may the lowest I may go down on a price is about $5 or $10, because I'm thinking, I'm not in this business to lose money. I want to generate some type of profit. I do have some flexibility, but at the same time, it's a certain point I'm not going to drop. Another good selling tip that works for me is to describe your product. Don't just post your product and post nice pictures. Put a little effort into bringing the description to life. I spend a lot of the time describing my product. I bring it to life, because that description will help sell it. That's another selling tip for me. As a seller, I want to talk about certain boundaries that I set for myself that also ties into my selling tips. Like I said, some of the boundaries I have in terms of negotiating my price. I may go $5 or $10 below my listing price, but a boundary I set for myself, I'm not going to go lower than that. Another boundary that works for me is I set a designated location at the local BP near my home where I do all of my transactions face to face. I'm not shipping anything. I'm not going to bring it to your house. I'm not going to go to another location. So a boundary that I set for myself that is very important as a seller is to set a designated location on where you're going to meet your potential customer and stick with it. You don't have to be going all the way around the world trying to sell your stuff. No, you are the seller. Stay in the driver's seat. In addition, I don't meet them at their home. I don't meet them at a designated location where they say they want to meet to buy my product. If they want my product, they will agree to meet at the designated public location to keep everybody safe. In addition, another boundary that I set for myself is when I list my items, I may take different types of pictures of the product or the actual product itself. I may take pictures of the product or the item from the supplier website. But if it's an item that's in a manufacturing package or a manufacturing box, I let them know that this is a new item. I've had no problems in selling these items, and I'm not going to unbox it. I'm not going to take it out, because if I do that, because a lot of times they may say, well, can I see a picture of the item unboxed? And I let them know. I say, you know, this is new in the manufacturing package, in the manufacturing box, and my boundaries and limitations, I'm not going to unbox that, because if you do all that, what I've discovered, they may not end up purchasing the item anyway. So that is another boundary that I keep for myself that ties into successful selling tips. I'm not doing all that. You know, it's a whole, the way I look at it, and I'm just keeping it real, it's a whole big wide world out there. And trust me, if you just have patience, you will eventually sell that item. And remember, I'm just doing this as a hobby. Another selling tip that works for me is I set a designated time where I meet with my potential buyers, and it's typically on a Saturday or Sunday between the hours of 12 noon and 1. You know, because I discovered in my zip code that I do the highest amount of my sales on the weekend. But you got to do what works for you. These are just some selling tips I'm sharing with the audience in regards to what works for me on selling on Facebook Marketplace. Another boundary that I set that works for me is if I'm communicating back and forth with a potential buyer, and you know, mind you now, they looked at my picture, they looked at my description of the item, and when I begin to see that the buyer is sending me all these messages back and forth with ridiculous requests, and when they get to the point where they start sending me negative message like your prices are too high, or ridiculous requests that I'm not going to follow, and so when it gets to the negative tone, all I do as a seller, because I don't have to go through this, I just block them. You know, when it get to the point when a person's sending me negative messages about my product, negative messages about the price or the description, all I do is block them. Because remember, there's a big old wide world out there, and it's going to be somebody who's going to want that product, ready to pay and ready to meet you. So all of this that I've talked about helps me maximize my time. It helps me as the seller stay in the driver's seat, because remember, my goal in terms of selling items on Facebook Marketplace is to make consistent progressive income. So all of these selling tips, all of these selling boundaries works for me in terms of helping me be a successful seller on Facebook Marketplace. And some weeks I may not make anything. Some weeks I mean, the other week I sold my daughter a car for $1,000, made $200 off selling furniture. So that's $1,200 of the sales right there. And for example, this week I didn't sell anything, but that's okay, because my goal for me is to keep this particular stream of income as a seller in the enjoyable mode, in the hobby mode. Everything else to take care of itself. I slowly build my inventory. As I make money, I replenish my inventory, and I keep it in enjoyable mode. So with all this being said, so selling on Facebook Marketplace, like I said, I discussed some about my successful selling tips. It's another stream of income for me in this gig economy, and that is going to set the stage. That is going to set the stage for me to talk more about this gig economy. That's going to tie into my next segment. The gig economy, I want to talk a little bit more about, just briefly, that cliffhanger. There's some pros and cons in this gig economy. And that is going to be the focus of my next segment, the pros and cons in this gig economy. We're not going too much into it. You know, society seems to be glorifying this gig economy, but I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about the cons and the pros of the gig economy. You know, you got to think about retirement, you got to think about medical, you got to think about vacation time, you got to think about sick time, because if you only just doing a gig and if you ain't out there hustling, then you ain't getting paid. If you wake up one morning and you ain't feeling too well, you ain't getting paid. If you ain't smart enough to be investing in retirement and purchasing your insurance, you in trouble. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but I do want to prepare the audience for my next segment in terms of talking about the pros and cons, the pitfalls. There we go. The pitfalls in this gig economy. So think about that. That's going to be the focus of my next segment. And as the audience is always aware, one of the things I'm beginning to do as I share my information, as I share my knowledge, you know, I believe I talked about one of my other successful selling tips is you want to give your product a good description. You want to give your product a good description, bring it to life. And for example, you all know that I specialize in selling nutcrackers. Here's an example of a particular nutcracker, unique. It's actually a carousel or merry-go-round nutcracker, and it's very unique, as you all can hear. And on this nutcracker, there are 3 different nutcrackers on this carousel that I'm going to sell as a lot. I'm pulling together lots of nutcrackers, variations of it, getting it ready for Christmas. And with this particular lot that I'm pulling together, they're going to have 3 little reindeers with that lot, with the nutcracker. And like I said, when you're selling something, take good pictures, give it a description, and the audience know I'm getting ready to sell aggressively and heavy in the month of October, November, December, and January for my very exquisite, unique combination of nutcrackers. So again, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button. My topic and focus of next week would be the pitfalls in this gig economy. It would be the pitfalls in this gig economy. I hope you all got something out of this this particular segment in terms of some of the selling tips and boundaries I use to be a successful seller on Facebook Marketplace. So you all have a great weekend. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you all again next Saturday.